So, it is June 10, 2016, and yesterday, United States President Barack Obama met with Bernie Sanders at the White House to speak to him and inform him that he would be endorsing Hillary Clinton for the Democratic Party nominee, which he then announced soon after. Now, while Bernie Sanders has not bowed out of the race, as Obama supposedly was trying to convince him to do, his chances are now very shaky, and we've probably just got our two warring candidates now for next president. Hillary Clinton for the Democrats versus Donald Trump on the Republican side. I'm going to talk briefly about all three, seeing as Bernie isn't quite out of the running yet, and I do have some things to say about him, and explain why I'm choosing who I'm choosing to vote for. You, of course, may vote for whoever you think would be best, but do listen to my perspective and give yours some thought and reasoning, as we've now got less than 6 months left before the actual election. So, which order to look at them in? I guess I'll do Sanders first, then Trump, then Clinton, and then I'll give some conclusion to it all. Bernie Sanders, is a self-proclaimed socialist, and that is the overall problem. Socialism throughout human history has always broken down. It does not work. Where it often begins, and this is exactly what Bernie Sanders continuously says and emphasizes, is that people in society need money, and there is a vast holding of money in the hands of the wealthy, that if redistributed by the government's force to the population, it will solve the problem. It is a fantasy that there is a class of evil rich that is keeping money away from the people and hoarding it, instead of the reality that even the wealthy who do live an ultra-high style of living are supporting numerous businesses and workers in doing so, cycling money through the economy and ultimately down to the people who provide labor and service for the workers on the base of the labor ladder or pyramid, or whichever diagram you prefer. Also, even if you did take all the money from the wealthy, I severely doubt that it would be enough to raise everyone's standard of living by much, especially with all the personal debt we've accumulated through poorly designed and executed government programs. And there's another problem I think most people are not realizing. If you tax the rich, if you tax the people making a lot of money, they're going to start losing the incentive to make that much money, because they lose so much of it to taxes that they begin to realize that there is little point to keep working as they do and keep losing so much. They start finding ways to hide their money so that it doesn't get to cycle through the economy and to other people at all, or they work less, drop their income and the productivity of their businesses, and so you may get 1 or 2 or a few years at most of really big withdrawals from the rich, but very soon the money's going to disappear and you'll have no one to take it from anymore. And if you want more detail on this topic, Stefan Molyneux, who is a philosopher with a historian background who I've been following on Free Domain Radio, has a very good explanation of it in a video titled The Truth About Bernie Sanders. I'll put a link to it down in the description. And about 12 minutes into the video, he begins talking about how much the wealthy actually do already pay. He also has videos about the other candidates, and I'll add those in too, along with my other references for this video. So I'm not going to vote for Bernie Sanders. He is too unrealistic about where money comes from, about what will work, about what will not work, and about what forceful distribution and redistribution of resources does to people and to a nation. Donald Trump. Okay. I've been watching the Democratic and Republican contenders' debates from the beginning, and at first I didn't like Donald Trump at all. I thought he was rude, too too attacking of people in inappropriate ways, and was not the best speaker, and a lot of people have these problems with him, understandably. However, as the contestants continued to be narrowed down, Donald Trump continued to remain and become more and more popular with people. In the beginning, I liked Chris Christie a lot more. For example, I thought Marco Rubio wasn't bad. Several of the others, but they've all bowed out. So why did Donald Trump do so well? Well, because Donald Trump was working with American people's anger and mistrust of the government and of mainstream media. Americans are tired of the hypersensitivity to political correctness, and Donald Trump didn't play the political correctness game. As much of a jerk as he was and is, he says what he means, and he means what he says. Again, I didn't like him at first. I saw him a few times on The Apprentice, so I knew somewhat what kind of person he was. There's also a spoof on it called Sith Apprentice, where someone playing Donald Trump is him playing the role of Darth Sidious, seeking a new apprentice among Darth Maul, Darth Tyrannus, and Darth Vader, and it's hilarious. I'm sure you can still find it on YouTube. He does fry Jar Jar Binks, which everyone cheers at, but I humorously called him Donald Duck, and I didn't think he'd ever be a serious contender for president. Of course, it turned out that in 2016 he was, and is now the Republican nominee, so if you're voting Republican, he's pretty much the one choice left. As I mentioned, it's because he resonated with what Americans were frustrated with the government about. And because he fought the political correctness, or as many of us now want to call it, political wussiness, and really opened up a way for people who are tired of being called racists and bigots for just wanting a little bit better control of the United States borders to finally speak out in politics. Some tried before Donald Trump came onto the scene, but they were beaten down with the race baiting over and over. And you know, Obama likes to portray himself as this great civil rights leader when race relations have actually only gotten worse. White people are called bigots just for being born white, despite having been taught in schools for at least a generation now, certainly my generation, and maybe the previous as well. The American Civil Rights Movement happened when my parents were teenagers and young adults, so it's been going on for a long time now. This teaching of children in schools to be open to all races and backgrounds, and to be welcoming of all races and cultures, to not judge people based on appearances or cultural background, and yet when it is said that whites are racist by sheer color and by their nature, that's hypocritical. That is the very definition of a racist statement in and of itself. We're sick of it, and we're tired of massive, barely controlled immigrations from our Mexican border, for one, which, by the way, is taking away employment from the black population, and they too are tired of it. I understand why people from Mexico and Central America want to come, as well as people from the Middle East and around the world. America, to many, is still a land of opportunity and freedom, even though we are fast becoming less free and in greater economic trouble. The rest of the world is largely even more torn apart, so it's worth it to them to risk coming to America for the chance at a better life. Even so, a country has the right to define and control its borders, and a country that does not do this is vulnerable. When Donald Trump talks about putting up a wall between the United States and Mexico, first of all, he is stating the obvious and practical solution to unrestrained immigration. And second, he does say that we'll also have a door in the wall, and people who go through the legal process of immigration can be allowed to come, live, and integrate into America. Let's talk about the whole banning Muslims issue. People counter this with, it is not the moral attitude of America, it is not the moral stance, it is not what America is about, to ban any entire race or religion from its shores. And Islam is a religion, not a race. Now, I'd usually agree with that, completely and without hesitation, until said race or religion is actively pursuing and engaging in a war of conquest against America, or, for that matter, anyone's home country. It's true that the United States government has stepped into many conflicts that it never should have, from the Vietnam War to the Iraq War, and most likely quite a few before and in between that I haven't done much research on individually. And certainly the breakup of the Middle East and Africa by the West and colonial powers has led to a lot of the conflicts continuing well into the present day. But these regions are inhabited by people who have been waging tribal and religious wars for thousands of years. It's foolish to think that that too is not what has continued to the present day. Europe is being brought down by Muslim immigration, by the attacks on Paris and Brussels, the arrival and growth of massive Muslim communities that are not coming in to integrate and assimilate into the European countries, but to establish their own Muslim sub-nations within Europe, is seriously upsetting the natural-born citizens of Europe, and America has noticed this. The refugees are being given asylum seemingly without restraint. Just recently, a family in Sweden, a father and his 2 teenage boys, were ordered to leave their home so that it could be given to foreign migrants. Are you going to tell me that that is how we want immigration to work? Are we trying to step aside and give these countries over to Muslims? A lot of these European countries, France, Germany, Britain, Sweden, and others, had and still have favorable opinions towards Muslims throughout their native populations. And look what that's led to. This is not equal treatment for all peoples. This is the forceful eviction of one population to make way for another. And the Muslims do not have a culture that is very tolerant of other cultures, which, for a successful melting pot, which is what the idea of what America wants to be, you need the ingredient cultures to be tolerant ones. A poll from the Center for Security Policy recently released data that, among other things, 51% of those polled agreed that Muslims in America should have the choice of being governed according to Sharia law. Well, Sharia law allows and encourages things like the murder of non-believers who won't convert. That's a real tolerant culture. Beheadings, brutality against women, which, hey, feminists, if you really care about the rights of and equality for women, should be waging war against. But sure don't seem to be. They seem to be too focused on the atrocities of American and white male supremacy when white Western people are probably one of the least subjugating of world cultures. Donald Trump wants to shut down Muslims entering the United States until we have a clearer picture and actual understanding of what's happening in the world, not just the government's deception that they believe they understand what is going on. At first, admittedly, I
didn't like this option either, but I knew that it could come to that, and given what's been happening in Europe and the fact that I'm seeing more and more women in American streets in burqas, which I don't like, I find myself agreeing with Trump, at least for a time. And as for the counter that not all Muslims are like that, well, again, I understand plenty of Muslims are coming to escape genuinely terrible conditions in the Middle East. But seeing as America and Europe have gotten so little help from their Muslim communities in identifying and stopping the terrorists that are among them, while at the same time these communities are growing and growing, at the same time that ISIS is still strong and is determined to establish a world caliphate, I say we need to take a stand against Islamic expansion. The media has attempted to twist Donald Trump's words so many times, and yet people listen to him. They rewatch the debates and his statements on YouTube and know that he's being misquoted and misrepresented, and so they lose their belief and trust in the media. And for every time the media tries to take a dump upon Trump, the media is effectively committing suicide when they don't even need to. Donald Trump still says many things that people don't like. Just recently about the judge that he didn't want to study his case because of his ancestry, which he's not entirely wrong if you look at the groups that the judge is a part of and the possibility of bias. People have tried to milk that for all they can, and maybe he shouldn't have put it that way. He has turned some people against him, but that's also a part of the enormous political correctness, and it looks like it's too late now to be using that against him. It doesn't work. It's not very much. Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton became the Secretary of State in January 2009 and held this position until February 2013. She was the senator from New York for the 8 years before that, and during her education at Yale Law School and in her postgraduate studies worked on cases of child abuse and custody. Well, it sounds good, but given how family courts treat children and how little the legal system cares for preserving the family unit, I don't know how much good she actually did there. Anyway, that's not the focus right now. I'll talk about my feelings about the courts some other time, because I have a lot to say on that. Hillary Clinton has been criticized for being very secretive, a weak speaker, and in recent years extremely untrustworthy about government, military, and national security information. This cannot be ignored, of course, and yet plenty of people seem to still be giving her a pass. The two most talked about cases of her pretty much betrayal of the American people are the Benghazi attack and the email controversy. So let's talk about those. In the 2012 attack on Benghazi, Libya, which, by the way, had been building up for many weeks, the American military stationed at the Benghazi compound had been under threat from local violent and focused attacks for well over a month. And Hillary should have known this, being the Secretary of State. It was found that 900 of her emails that she sent from a non-government server were in reference to Libya, so who knows what she possibly leaked out. So the government's initial statements to the American people that this was an uncoordinated, unplanned attack, as well as simply in response to being offended by some anti-Islamic internet video, was complete bullshit. Which, again, she should have known and should have said. Then, in response to being questioned about security and information lapses during the attack, her answer was, "The fact is we have 4 dead Americans, including the United States Ambassador, J. Christopher Stevens. Was it because of a protest, or was it because of guys out for a walk who decided they would go and kill some Americans? What difference does it make now?" Well, it makes a huge difference. It's the difference between a random, crazy, unplanned attack and an act of war. This was a planned act of war. Ambassador Stevens most likely being the intended target, or at least the primary target, and Hillary Clinton's handling of it was not that of a strong or honest leader. As for the whole issue surrounding her emails, well, in November 2014, which was after the attack, and well into her using her own personal email, Obama signed an updated act of federal records requiring public officials to forward all their work-related emails to their government addresses. So he knew this was a real concern now. Hillary Clinton's office failed to deliver over 30,000, deeming them as private. See, the problem with her using her own private email rather than the one provided to her by the government is that the government's information is under attack at all times. Lots of people want to get their hands on American intelligence. And so they have very powerful firewalls and procedures of protecting their information, even if it is often from the American people themselves. And whatever information is sent or received can be traced. They can track down what it was and who received it. With a personal email, there is no such protection. So anything sent or received is pretty much out there for the world to see. You don't know what may have been compromised and what wasn't, and when you're the head diplomat of a country, this is very essential to be in control of. So when she told people that she never sent or received any classified information, but as Secretary of State, her job is to handle classified information, people were justifiably very skeptical about that, and it did not make sense at all. So when so many emails are hidden away by her in her office, well, that makes people trust her all the less. In September 2015, the Obama administration did find work emails between Clinton and General David Petraeus that she hadn't delivered to the government address. So that makes it almost certain that she did deal with some sensitive information from her private address. Again, who knows what she leaked about Libya, or putting this national information at extreme risk. A few months later, the Inspector General for the Intelligence Community, Charles McCullough, revealed that several emails from Clinton's stash, again from her private email address, had held a higher classification status than top secret. So why is President Obama endorsing a candidate who is so untrustworthy, especially when American trust in their government is already rock bottom as it is? I mean, you go around asking people at random from almost any American demographic if they trust their government, and the answers are overwhelmingly hell no, which in itself is not a good sign for a country. Well, a lot of Obama's plans and legacies rely on keeping the Democrats in the White House and in power. And he is desperately trying to stop Donald Trump and the Republicans, who have now gained a majority in both houses of Congress. Government has never been good at the distribution of wealth throughout its country's population. Welfare, which was originally meant to only be for the very few people left alone in bad situations, very poor health, or without families to help them out, has only expanded to the point where it now so often replaces the family support structure, which is terrible. And is too often easier than getting work, supporting yourself, and contributing to a family, which is what the base unit of America should be. In the 2016 movie 13 Hours, The Secret Soldiers in Benghazi, the American soldiers at the end of the movie say to the Libyans, or the Libyan president, I'm not sure exactly who it was, I need to watch that movie again, "You fix this," meaning you restore order in your own country. It is not America's responsibility to fight every conflict going on in the world, to heal and help solve the problems of every country, and many countries don't even want us to. At the beginning of the movie Black Hawk Down, for example, which is about the 1993 Battle of Mogadishu in Somalia, the people there tell the American soldiers, this is our war, not yours. And there's a lot of truth to that. When America does interfere, we often leave the foreign countries worse off than they were before, putting America into years or even decades of war that sinks us further and further into debt and destroys the view of America and Western culture throughout the world. It is America's responsibility to act smarter, to not force the world to become what we want it to be, rather than what it can be or what they're ready to be. To not fight conflicts that we have no part in, and to protect its own people. We have failed at that. And it is important to learn from that, which our government has not. And schools don't teach history as they could, using past events and patterns of human behavior which influence diplomacy and warfare as they are relevant to what is currently happening in the world. So we have very few people learning the lessons of history, and our entire government made up of people trained as lawyers rather than former military or historians or philosophers or economists or natural scientists. Some people have said Donald Trump cannot be trusted with the federal budget because a few of his companies have gone under, have filed for bankruptcy. Well, in the business world, this sometimes happens. Donald Trump has been extremely successful in business, while our government has been extremely unrestrained with its spending, throwing away huge amounts of money on the war against poverty. Poverty has only gotten worse. The war on drugs, which has only made crime worse and continued to split families, with all the imprisonments and on overseas wars, which are not being resolved, all the while taxing the American people more for it. I'm ready to try a different approach. Donald Trump does not have a great understanding of environmental issues. He recently said about California that they have no doubt, it's just that all their water is being diverted to protect this one little fish in the Delta. Well, first of all, droughts are occurring all over the world. And in California, this water issue, the of the estuary, the preserving the habitats for the fish is a far more complicated topic than what he summed up there, and I'm in fact going to make a whole other video addressing the California drought and the Delta smelt fish controversy. Donald Trump is no climate scientist, he is no ecologist, but those are issues that require hydrologists and ecologists and city policy planners and environmentalists. And America is working on reconstructing its ecosystems. So that's actually not the issue I need the next president to be addressing. It'd be nice if he were a bit more knowledgeable, but I don't really expect that right now. So, in conclusion, among these three candidates, I'm going to be voting for Donald Trump in the November elections. I wish there was someone better and not so juvenile in his language, but given what I have to work with, I, like many others, would rather have a jerk who's going to get something decisive and realistic done. Bernie Sanders is an idealist, but he's an idealist who believes in a fantasy that has never worked out in human history. And Hillary Clinton is too risky. She has proven too many times that she cannot be trusted or believed. I would love to have a woman president for America, but I'd like to wait until we can have one who is a lot more honest and a much stronger leader. Now, I don't like that Donald Trump has had 3 marriages and children from each one of them. I am massively opposed to divorce and the family court system. I myself and my siblings have suffered immensely from it within our own family. But given that this is so common in our own Rocky culture now, it's hardly unique to him. Bernie Sanders has had 2 marriages himself. Hillary has only been in 1, but she has participated in a legal system that very much abuses children and families. People will often ask, can't we get anyone better running for president than Sanders or Clinton or Trump? And the answer would be, yes, we can. But they never get very far because no one votes for them. If you want a realist who is a nice person, who's not a jerk, or not a liar, which I don't think Donald Trump's a liar, but many of the other candidates are. Maybe he hides quite a few things. He is a bit of a jerk. The others aren't much better. If you want someone better, we've got to start being prepared to hear some things that we don't want to hear. We've got to stop allowing political correctness to have power over us, and it's not easy.